Hey guys, Professor Jeff here again. This is going to be a little bit of a shorter video lecture this time. We're just going to kind of wrap up our section on ancient Greek and Roman philosophy. So we're going to take a little bit of a look at that time period and when it was and the major figures that we covered within it, as well as a few major schools of thought that followed Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. All right, let's go. So as we finish up our section on ancient Greek and Roman philosophy, I just want to remind us which thinkers exactly fit into this section and what relative time periods they were practicing writing, speaking, however they were doing their philosophy. So Thales was the first philosopher that we know of in Western history. Okay, this is in the 600s BC. All of the numbers I have here are sort of rounded off, so it's in the 600s BC. Thales was around. He didn't actually write anything. Remember, we had to learn about his ideas through other philosophers of the time who had written about him. And then we move into Heraclitus and Parmenides, who were essentially contemporaries. They were basically around at the same time, but in different places. And then as we go into the 400s was when Socrates was philosophizing and Plato was his student. And then remember, Socrates also didn't write anything. What we know about Socrates mostly comes to us from historical artifacts as well as what Plato had written about him. And it's common belief that a lot of what happened in the dialogues that Plato wrote is fictionalized. So just know that as you read as well. And then in the 300s BC, we have Aristotle and Epicurus, who were around the same time. And these were all of our ancient Greek philosophers. Marcus Aurelius really stands out as the only Roman who was around and writing the Meditations in 150 AD. Okay, so let's remember here too that the reason that Greek philosophy essentially stopped at this point is because the Roman Empire had been taking over Greek territory, and that changed a lot of things, historically speaking. To very generally summarize some of the schools of thought that followed Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle in ancient Greece and even ancient Rome, we should begin with the ancient Cynics, who can be best represented by Diogenes, who was around and philosophizing around 350 BC. And at the bottom here, I just sort of have the major focus of the different schools of thought that are represented here. So for the Cynics, they emphasized people living as naturally as possible. And while we don't cover Diogenes directly in this class, I will link a good video that gives a basic explanation of some of the things Diogenes believed, spoke about, and what the Cynics stood for as a group. But just moving forward a little bit in history here, there are the Epicureans, best represented by Epicurus, around the year 300 BC, and as we should have gained from the class reading, his greatest value is happiness. Right? He's just trying to figure out how people can achieve happiness. And this goes back to the problem of hedonism that we covered in the Plato section. This is a recurring problem that we'll see come up throughout the course of Western philosophy. Finally, we have the Stoics, who is represented, at least in our syllabus, by Marcus Aurelius. There were Stoic philosophers who preceded Marcus Aurelius and who were technically ancient Greeks. Aurelius just has a nice book that we can look at that's divided into nice sections. And he was technically an ancient Roman. He was a Roman emperor, and he was around in 150 AD. And as we should have gathered from the reading, a central concern for the Stoics was how to achieve a state of calm. How do we stop the passions or our emotions from causing us turmoil in life? All right, so these are the three distinct post-Socratic schools of thoughts: the Cynics, the Stoics, and the Epicureans. There were also, just to make a note, the Neoplatonists, who believed very similarly to Plato that ideas existed in some form in another realm and they were the highest version of truth or reality. All right, so as promised, that was a little bit of a shorter lecture for today. Just as a reminder, we went over which philosophers were part of our ancient Greek and Roman section. All right, this was Thales, Heraclitus, Parmenides, Socrates/Plato, Aristotle, Epicurus, and Marcus Aurelius. We also went over three major post-Socratic schools of thought that occurred after Aristotle. And that is it. As of next time, we should be starting our section on modern philosophy with Descartes. See you then.